All right, I think you are all welcome to get food throughout the duration of this, but I think to honor everyone's time, I'm going to start and appreciate seeing all of your faces. Right off the bat, I'm going to say that we're recording the meeting for people who can't be here. So just make sure you know that. Everybody knows. And I also want to introduce myself. I'm Katrina Kessler. I'm the Commissioner of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. Thanks again for your time today. This is really important work, and we have a number of staff here with us that are going to help throughout the evening, but mostly this is to hear from you all who don't work at the Pollution Control Agency. So I was hoping that we could start with introductions, and we can pass the microphone around. You don't all have to come and stand in this one place. Just know that your voice will be in as a part of the recording. Is that cool? Okay. And then if you could just say what brings you to this work or this space, that would be great. Brief but meaningful. And so I will start with Helen.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. My name is Helen Walkew, and I'm the Director of Tribal Affairs and Diverse Communities at the Pollution Control Agency. And what brings me to this space is you all and this work that we're doing together and the work that we do at the agency regarding environmental justice, working with respective tribal nations, and it's just really great to be with you all here today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Tester. I'm the Deputy Commissioner of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and just delighted to be able to be here to listen and learn from all of you. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Kurt Simone King. I'm with EJCC, and I'm just here to learn and give input.
Michael Kraus with Renewable Energy Partners. We are a Black-owned solar development firm located in North Minneapolis, and we are interested in just the broader topics around environmental justice.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Shaw. I'm a part of the Northside Greenstone Task Force in Minneapolis and also MN 350 Pipeline Resistance Team. And I'm very interested in what's happening in our areas of environmental justice too.
Thank you. Bill Dressler with Environmental Initiative. My 20th year there. Makes me feel really old. Working at Cleaner Minnesota and helping to coordinate the Environmental Justice Coordinating Councils.
Hi everyone, my name is Cecilia Calvo. I work at the Minnesota Environmental Partnership. I'm an Environmental Justice Coordinating Council Fellow, and I'm also part of the leadership team of the Frontline Communities Protection Coalition. And what brings me here is that I'm passionate about environmental justice, and I'm excited about this law and how we can center community voices and bring protections to communities that are overburdened by pollution.
Hi, my name is Kyle Sonajima with Minneapolis Climate Action, and we are a nonprofit focused on energy democracy and healing and repairing toxic systems to not repeat the mistakes of the past. And I'm here to listen and learn and connect.
You want a redo? No, it's okay. Gawin, Joseph Mataluta Vital. I'm with Hennepin County and Energy and Environment, and we're just here to hear about this rule change, learn more from you all, and assist where we can to continue this partnership.
Hello, my name is Keely Shiaka. I'm a 2L at Mitchell-Hamlin School of Law and a law clerk at the Minnesota Center for Environmental Advocacy, and I've been working in environmental justice issues for a couple years now, and happy to be here.
Hi, my name is Wendell O. Ward, aka WOW. I'm here with the Environmental Justice Coordinating Council, which is EJCC, and I'm just here to learn more about what's going on, what you guys have, the findings you have found since our past meetings and things like that. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Silva and I work with CAPI, and I run their youth cohort, which is on environmental justice, and we also just got approved for a new building which is going to have solar stuff, so we're looking to expand and learn about more green energy.
Hey everyone, my name is Rob Hendrickson. I'm on the Southside Green Zone Council in Minneapolis, and I'm here because I just got a master's in geographic information science and studied cumulative impacts and stuff.
Hi everyone, my name is Mario Ojeda. I'm with Fresh Energy. We're a clean energy policy nonprofit based in St. Paul. I'm here taking notes for my colleague Janice Watts, who's a part of the BIPOC EJ table and part of the Frontline Coalition. And yeah, that's all. Environmental justice is what I'm here for.
Hi, I'm Roxanne, and I started out as an organizer mostly in North Minneapolis, but the work we do now has been spreading to South Side and Northeast Side as well as the state. So I don't no longer just say just North Side organizer, but I work for McAllister for the Mississippi program, also work for Hope Community with Parks and Power, and then we have our own coalition called Community Members for Environmental Justice. And I partner with the city and Minneapolis Public Schools.
Good afternoon, everyone. Darren Broughton with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and here to, again, listen. Also to say a big thank you to everyone at this table as we could do the next phase of this work on cumulative impacts. And it is the hard work of everyone at this table of getting that through the legislature, so thank you.
Bonjour, Ontario Indigenous cause. I descend from the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. My pronouns are she, her, quay, and I'm coming here as a chemist, but also as a youth worker. I'm with McGizzy, a nonprofit in Southside, and I implement, design, and execute STEM-based curriculum that's culturally competent for Native students. And we're located just off of Cedar Avenue and Lake Street, so we're very interested in air quality. A lot of our students are struggling with asthma and other, health disparity. And so the way that the environment is handled and loved is very close to my heart, and I see it in the youth that I work with every day. So something I'm very invested in.
Thank you. My name is Alexander Bourne. My pronouns are he, him, his. I am here today, like some others, just to listen. I'm a candidate for St. Paul City Council, Ward 7, over on the east side, where these kinds of issues are very prevalent. And so I like to consider myself an environmentalist. So thank you all for doing what you do. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sophia Benrud. I'm with the Frontline Communities Protection Coalition, also at Minnesota Environmental Justice Table, and also I'm just happy we're in our neighborhood that I live in. It was 3 minutes away.
Hi, my name is Charles from Palmetto Jr. I use he, they pronouns. I'm also with the M&EJ table, just looking forward to listen and learn more, and also as a former member of the MPCA's Environmental Justice Advisory Group. So yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Todd Bewan. I'm with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I use he, him pronouns. I'm going to be helping to have the conversation today. I mean, this legislation has been years in the making. It's been hard work to get here, and now we're going to talk about where we go from here, and looking forward to the conversation.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Hotz. My pronouns are she, her. I am also with the Pollution Control Agency. Excited to be here, excited for this conversation this evening. And my role is to really hopefully explain the rulemaking process a little bit and start the conversation to make sure that everybody who wants to be involved is involved and has a seat at the table. So we're kicking it off tonight.
So we'll just, hi Michael, we're just introducing ourselves, and as you come in the room, we'll just put you on the spot and have you introduce yourself just briefly as we start.
North Minneapolis is going green. Give us a call and learn what we mean.
Where once lie urban blight, now sits luscious garden sites. Gardens without borders, classrooms without walls, architects of our own destinies, access to food, justice for all. And now, like sweet potato vines, our missions and goals all intertwine. My name is Michael Cheney. I'm the founder and executive director of Project Sweetie Pie.
Bujugo Kinewieg, Benezio de Que Indigo, Chimiguchiwanim Ben Bizendawshin. I said, hello, my name is Triessa, and thank you for listening to my little introduction.
Hi everyone, my name is Alicia. I also work at the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I'm our project coordinator and consultation strategist, and then the Environmental Justice and Engagement Unit. You all most likely received an email from me. If you did not, please come talk to me. I want to make sure I get you on the list. And I'm excited for the conversation, so thank you.
I'm not forgetting about Dr. Morris. I'm shortly going to introduce Dr. Morris. So just again, thanks to everyone. If you haven't seen the food and the drinks, help yourself. As you heard the meat of this evening, we're planning to share information about cumulative impacts. Some of you were there, or the cumulative impacts law that was passed, I should say, and what's next. Some of you were at the meeting on June 1st, so it's great to see you again. And some of you have been involved in this work for a decade plus. So as others have said, thank you. We would not be here without all of the effort that the collective have put in, and we recognize that and want to show gratitude, and then also recognize that in order to do this well going forward, we need to be doing it together. So trying to find opportunities to move through a very bureaucratic process in a way that is meaningful with community is one of the challenges that we're going to talk about tonight. But just because I like to be able to be responsive and kind of close the loop on things, I want to call to just a couple details from the June 1st meeting. So we met in Minneapolis at the Rock, and now we're in St. Paul, and it's great to be in St. Paul, and we're happy to come to other communities too. And at that meeting, there were a number of questions that were asked and things that we wanted to follow up on. One of the things that Michael had asked us was whether or not we would participate in the Juneteenth event, and we did, and it was great, and I want to thank Michael and everyone else who allowed us to be a sponsor of that event, and we appreciated Project Sweetie Pie's leadership and their invitation to do that, and our ability to be able to follow through there. There was active conversation at the last meeting about a project that MnDOT and the Department of Health are looking into, which is related to air monitoring in public transit. And Boyce, who was also a former MPCA Environmental Justice Advisory Group member, had asked a number of questions about that, and Alicia has followed up. I don't have all those details, but Alicia can provide them to people who want them. There were questions about the Smith Foundry, which is located in the Hiawatha Cedar Lake neighborhood, and the permitting status, and we have more information about that to share too. I can tell you that the MPCA is actively working on air modeling of that facility, and that includes not just that individual facility, but the collective overall cumulative burden that facility represents. So now is the time to engage with us around that particular permitting action as well. There were questions about whether or not we would record the meetings and have them available broader, and so just again a reminder, the meeting is being recorded. We will make the meeting available to others who can't be here tonight, and in order to capture and be transparent, I wanted everyone to know that. So we are here tonight to talk about one particular topic, and there will be more opportunities to engage on cumulative impacts, but I also want to just call to attention that we want to continue to have just dialogue with community. So if you are interested in continuing to work with us on cumulative impacts specifically after tonight, we'll want to hear from you, and we want to hear your ideas here in this space, but we also will want to know if and where we should be coming next, just to listen and to build relationships generally with the agency's work. So it's kind of a two-pronged goal that we have here. Environmental justice is really important to me. As the commissioner of the Pollution Control Agency, I want to lift up that it's also very important to the governor and the lieutenant governor and the entire administration. So just hopefully you feel that, and I want you to know that we're committed. And it's hard work, and it will be difficult at times, and we're going to have to persist through it, and that's why we're here tonight to kick that off. So before Todd and Anna introduce the background on cumulative impacts, I want to formally introduce Dr. Kristen Morris. So Dr. Morris specializes in global diversity and inclusion panel discussions, organizational development, and culturally diverse implementation. Dr. Morris has over 14 years of experience and is an award-winning licensed adult educator and performance improvement professional. We are very thankful to have her here as our facilitator today, and I will hand it off to Dr. Morris to share more about herself and her role. And she's going to Beyonce, which I think is so cool.
Right, I had to have the Beyonce here today, so thank you all. I am Dr. Kristen Morris. Thank you so much, Commissioner. My role here today is your facilitator to facilitate this conversation. It is to read the space and lift up your voices and your concerns. This is our library. This is the people's library. And so it's really important to have this conversation here. I encourage you all to speak. I encourage you all to share. But I am going to be here. My role today is to serve as a conduit between the agency and you all. And I'm not going to speak for you because I want you to speak for yourself. But what I will do is get up and say, you know what? I feel like folks have something to say. I'm looking at the faces in the space and I'm going, we need to pause for a moment. And so to be able to facilitate that moment is going to be important for us to advance the process here. And so that's my goal here. In everything that I do, I want to make sure that I leave a process, an organization, a conversation better off than when I first got there. And so that's my role today. And if you need me, I'll be back in the corner. So feel free to ask me any questions, but at this moment, I'll bring up the presenters.
Is there a sign-in sheet or something?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Todd Bewin. I'm with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, and Anna and I are going to, we got a few slides to share with you. Our goal is really a couple things. We want to talk about this new law that was passed this legislative session in 2023. And then we want to tell you what it directs us to do, in terms of what the law says, what rulemaking we need to do to continue the process forward, what that's going to look like in terms of engagement with communities. And so we're going to share a few slides. We invite you to ask questions as we go. We probably don't have more than 20 minutes or so of material, but that could be interspersed with discussion and questions. Or if we do finish, and kind of move through this material, then we're going to have a lot of time to talk after that and hear from you all. As I said when I introduced myself, this is groundbreaking stuff, this law. There are folks that have worked very hard on it for a number of years, and it really does direct our agency, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, to do things differently, to look at facility proposals in ways that we haven't before, and to look in areas that are defined in the law that have historically been presented with environmental stressors beyond what most Minnesotans experience. So it directs us where to look, what to look for, and how to resolve some of these issues from our history. There's a number of new provisions in the law, and that's what I'm going to talk about, and then Anna's going to talk more about the rulemaking that we'll be doing. One of the things that we're directed to do is rulemaking, and the law really can't be implemented without the rulemaking. So we've been at this for a number of years, getting to this point, the frustrating thing, and one of the frustrating things, is that we've got some work to do in front of us before this is really going to make a big change. And we'll describe what that is, what it's going to look like, and how you'll have an opportunity to be a part of that. And we haven't started the rulemaking process yet. You were given a handout when you came in. Monday is the day that the request for comment, which is the formal beginning of what we're doing, kicks off. You've got a sort of a sneak peek at what's going to be made available statewide on Monday the 24th. But that provides some information on what we'll be talking about tonight. And let me just say, I'm going to be talking about the legislation, and I am going to be looking a little bit at my paper, and I apologize for that, because I'm trying to take from the legislation as directly and close as I can, so that you're hearing it and actually what's on paper in the legislation. It's a little bit like trying to just provide another level of explanation of what the law says and what we're directed to do, because there's some strictness in there in terms of what we can and can't do, and I want to try to convey that to you, that the law says what it says, and we're going to be trying to follow that as we go forward. So I'm going to be referring to my paper a little bit. Next slide, please. Okay. All right, so the first thing the law does is it defines environmental justice areas. And the bullet points here are that these are communities that are 40% or more of the population is non-white, 35% or more of the households have an income at or below 200% of poverty, so $60,000 for a family of 4. 40% or more of the population over the age of 5 has limited English proficiency, and otherwise could be located in Indian country. Is another environmental justice area, is Indian country. Next slide. We provided maps on the handout as well, and there's maps in the back, and I just want to mention what do these maps show. These were produced by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency based on the criteria that are in the law. The dark blue are the environmental justice areas, and we can provide greater resolution on this. Today we provided it for the 7-county metro area here, but obviously we can zoom in, we can share that with you. And then the light blue is the 1-mile radius around those environmental justice areas. So these are the areas that are subject to the law. Not only that EJ area, but the 1-mile radius around that. Next slide. So we have a 7-county metro area that is covered under this law, as well as Duluth on the left and Rochester on the right. Cities, first-class cities in Minnesota, other than the metro area. And then the other area that is impacted is Indian country. Next slide. Who is impacted? We have done a search of facilities that fall in these geographic areas. And there's currently about 110 facilities in Minnesota that fall in those environmental justice areas and the 1-mile radius in the metro area and Duluth and Rochester. These are existing facilities, but the law would also be subject, or would apply to any new facility that is trying to come into those communities, into those areas. So if someone wants to build a new facility, start a new business that needs an air permit, qualifies under the size of the facility, they would fall under this law. But there are 110 existing facilities in Minnesota that are there, and if they were, they would come in, and if they were trying to do an expansion, grow their facility, if we're just reissuing a permit, they would be subject to the cumulative impacts requirement. Let's go to the next slide. So what the law says, and this is, I'm going to touch on these bullets in a little bit of a more detailed way. This law places the responsibility for, we are the regulatory agency that is responsible for enforcing the law. So we would be responsible for determining whether a proposed permit action substantially impacts the environment or the health of residents, and whether a cumulative impacts analysis is required. The information that we would need to review for that is the permit application provided by the facility. The facility has to make a declarative statement as to whether they think a cumulative impacts analysis applies to them. And we need to...
What'd you say? You said permit application, then after that.
Yeah, the facility needs to, in their permit application, let us know if they think the cumulative impacts law applies to them. We would define what the factors that they need to consider in the rulemaking. Now, and we're going to review that. We may look at it and say, well, this facility, they didn't take X, Y, and Z into account. So we're going to be reviewing their work on that.
Why would you ask companies if they think they are required? Would you ask our communities if we think they should be in our community?
No shame.
Right, that's a good point, but placing some
leaving it to them, but if you're not giving us that same power, then that seems a little too much.
And there will be opportunities for everybody to weigh in on. There's opportunities for petitions, community petitions, but it's I kind of see it as placing responsibility on the company to look at these things in ways that they've never had to before, and that they need to answer these questions in the permit application.
Can we see this as you talk about it, or can we see the application as you talk about it?
We haven't developed that yet because the rulemaking will define what goes into the application.
And one thing about other folks doing stuff up front, as opposed to the community being a part of that process, then the community stuff really isn't valued. And the things we need are really not put in place.
And so remember, we'll talk about that, and that's why you're here, right? And so remember, as we are thinking about how this process is going to go, right? This is not a one-time process. The community will be involved. And so the questions that you're asking are great questions, but these are questions that we will be able to then consider, right, as we are going along in that process. So
okay, so that wasn't said, that the application hasn't been done yet. It was almost like, these are the questions that we're gonna ask them, as if it was already decided. So thanks for letting us know. I'm putting a check mark by that question for places that you just mentioned.
This is all foundational stuff, right? And so this is why you're here. And so as you're asking those questions, they're gonna take that back and go, okay, so we need to make sure that we get this community input, right?
Can we pause real quick? Because here's something I just want to make an announcement about that I see a lot, not just in this room, but everywhere all over the government. Y'all are hiring black people to be the intermediary where y'all get uncomfortable or can't answer a question. And it makes me uncomfortable, right? Because that's my sister, but I will tell her that, I will tell anybody who can't manage me. So I don't want that to keep happening to us. If we're asking questions and then all of a sudden, I mean, because why would this person be in front of the room? Then you might as well be in front of the room, sis.
Well, let me tell you something. So I'm uniquely qualified to be in this space now. So let's
Say
not forget that. So we're standing hand in hand. But I'm gonna get up to add an extra bit of commentary around this. But don't think that, yes, I'm serving as a conduit and making sure we're lifting up your voices, but I'm not here as a token, right? I'm uniquely positioned to be in this space. No, I get it.
But white people use us as guard dogs and as, people to keep them safe, right?
Right.
In these spaces. And so I noticed that. And what I don't want them to keep doing is hiring black people to be the guards and the, you know what I mean? Like, we need to be the ones directing the room.
So
and if he doesn't know how to answer that question, then y'all need to switch roles.
No, so listen to this, because after this is done, I'm gonna go back and go be in the States to go, don't forget what they said. So understand that they're not hiring me just to be up here to manage anybody. That's not my role. My role is to facilitate the conversation and keep it moving forward.
Also, this
right?
is just a presentation.
Right,
of what
this
we're
read, right? Oh yeah, I don't go on rules because I've been doing this for about 5 years. So I wouldn't come to a space and feel like, you know what I mean, I gotta follow the rules because rules didn't get us here. Fighting hard and pushing y'all and demanding and making you uncomfortable, that's what got us here. So I'm not gonna make you comfortable, y'all already know, and I don't have the energy, so I just want to be clear. They didn't say that in the beginning, that what they have on the application is, you know, it's changeable. So that's something, a communication that y'all missed. So now we know. Yeah, and now we're gonna move forward.
Okay, please be more inclusive, because I knew a black from here and didn't know about this until she called me 2 hours ago. So, you know, we gotta find a way to let the community really know what we're talking about, these meetings that are going on, because, you know, if we don't, the community's not involved.
Absolutely, this is step one.
Yeah, so Todd is just going through what the law says we have to do. All the details about what's in a permit application or who gets to see a permit application when, that is far down the road. So maybe higher level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, well, finish, but I was just saying if it was done, I'd like to look at it on visual.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I missed the way that I, spoke of it. It was sort of an example of what might happen, but my answer to the question was we have not yet written a permit application. We have not yet written a rule. So I was speaking hypothetically, which was a mistake. So I'm sorry about that.
But she makes a valid point.
Right.
Usually, we're brought in at the tail end of the process.
That's right.
That's been the history of agencies like this, in fact, all governmental agencies. They come and put together a plan, and then they expect that we give it the stamp of approval. What she's suggesting is very appropriate, that we are here at the beginning, and that we need to be alongside of you folks, co-creating, co-designing, and co-curating this process so that it addresses all of the needs of the community and it's just not lopsided as it historically has been.
Right.
Thanks, Jane.
Well said.
Okay, so I did mention the petition, that there's a petition option that is provided in the law for 100 individuals within a community to really call the question on a facility and to raise that up to our commissioner. And in a cumulative impact analysis process, the company needs to hold at least 2 public meetings. One prior to the release of the information to get input from the community, and one after the material's been put together where the community can see what is in the application and and a sort of a more detailed conversation about the proposal. Next slide. The facilities that are required to conduct the meetings, they need to make a declarative invitation to the meeting at least 30 days prior to the meeting. And then once the materials are, there needs to be a recording of the meeting, there needs to be comments taken at the meeting, there needs to be an open comment period following the meeting, and then all of that information needs to be compiled and made available to the public and will be part of the decision-making process for the commissioner. The legislation directs the MPCA to develop rules that needs to define all of these things. The benchmarks, which are the risk that is posed by the facility and other impacts in the community. Environmental stressors can be from the facility that's proposed, but they can also be, and they are from, roadways, noise, heat, odor, all the things that we encounter in our community, and all of that. That's what a cumulative impact analysis does, is it looks at all of the impacts, not just what's coming out of a smokestack on a building, but the other impacts that are there in the community that people are subject to. The next slide.
Okay.
Now, the law says that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency Commissioner must deny a permit, and this is really a significant change in our law, if the cumulative impact analysis, which is going to be a lot of technical information, but a lot of input also from people in the community, What are the environmental stressors that people are experiencing? What are the socioeconomic impacts? What is the underlying health of the community? What do we know about community health relative to maybe other parts of Minnesota? And is the facility going to have this is the wording of the law that needs to be worked through in a lot of, this will be a very important part of the rulemaking, is what is a substantial adverse impact? What does that look like, and what does it look like for the health of people in the community? And if those things apply, then the permit can be denied by the commissioner. There is one sort of off-ramp, but it needs to be a community benefit. There needs to be some community benefit, is what it's called in the law, that if the facility and the commissioner and the community agree that there are some benefits from this facility coming into the community, and the facility can reduce their pollution, they can make improvements in the community, and that there's an offset to the impact on the community from that, a community benefit agreement is an option for the facility. But it would have to be agreed to by our commissioner and taking into account all of what's happening and all the input that's received. Sir?
Quick question. With that last point, it says facility fails to enter into a community benefit agreement with the MPCA. Is that going to take on the voice of the community, or should that agreement be with the community itself and not the agency?
Yeah, well, at this point, the law says that the MPCA has to consider the option of a community benefit, and what we need to work out in the rulemaking is how does that happen? What role does the community play in that community benefit agreement?
And community fought for it to not be the MPCA, just for context, not in a community agreement because that's not the community, it's the MPCA, and I just think that context of historical, of what folks did fight for versus what we ended up is important too.
And so on top of that, I think this comes back full circle to what this lady was speaking to, the impact on the community. So is the movement should be around being community-centered, because that's who's truly impacted. And so the agreements needs to have the language, or the MPCA needs to have an agreement with the community in order for the community voices to be well heard and well respected, and the input valued, and making sure that the communities are kept safe. So I think that in developing the application, community input, and asking the right questions, and not the questions that can be easily answered, but the challenging questions. And then is also an addendum to including the community in that. Or is that a relationship that you have to establish with the community, since the rule of the law has the MPCA? And if the language is, as she mentioned, the community spoke against it, if that's on record, then we may need to go back and revisit that and change that directive in order for the community to truly, as Michael said, be a part of the co-creation, co-curating, and co-development of this process. Because otherwise it's repeating the status quo, and I'll go back to the urban renewal authorities not listening to the community voice when a lot of the eminent domain and displacement took place with the interstates and different things that stripped people of residences and businesses in the past. So I think there's some things that really need to be looked at when we're looking.
The problem with when we spoke up about what we wanted was the way that they create law. There's a lot of conversation happening back room with like the labor union, which we saw. You know, I'm kind of confused because the labor union, you would think a lot of them had to do with like solar, and you know, they're getting a lot of money from green opportunities. So why were they pushing back on environmental justice and health? But they were. Them, they said the trades, and then who else? It was corporations in general. So they were behind the rooms negotiating that with other public officials. And so although we kept going back and forth, we had to decide between what to keep and what to let go. You know what I mean? But I will say that you need to define community, and you need to define, just like you need to define substantial, you need to define benefits. Because we had the Upper Harbor terminal situation happening in our community, and what they did was they created a group of well-established black folks in our community who ended up giving the go, right? And we're all kind of promised, everybody was promised things in our community, right? By these people who had all this money, right? That's their thing. They go to every country, wherever they go to, it's the same thing. They promise, they divide, they pull us apart, you know, and then they take the land. Like, it's always the same thing, right? And so that's what they did. And so now, you can ask anybody, nobody knows what's going on with the Upper Harbor Terminal. Nobody knows anything, because all that community talk, everybody's now gone. Where's all the community now? It's being built with or without us, and what are the real true benefits? You know what I mean? Because y'all can say anything. Like, matter of fact, example, GAF makes roofing shingles. Billion-dollar corporation all over the nation, right? Makes 25% of the profits in North Minneapolis alone. Bought the land for $1. You know what they're giving to our community? Steaks. Steaks to North Market, right? For an annual barbecue that they do. And they tried to give backpacks to North Minneapolis, but they remembered who GAF was, and they remembered the work that we're doing out here, and they sent those backpacks back. Those backpacks had GAF written on the back of the backpacks, and they were giving that to kids over north with a $500 supply list for back-to-school supplies. Now you tell me, is that beneficial?
To that point, I just had a quick question, because I haven't read the full statute, but is there an enforcement mechanism for that benefit agreement with whatever entity right now?
Absolutely. If you built into it that, okay, the company commits to doing X, Y, and Z in the community benefit agreement, there would be enforcement within that.
Can I just say something? So, yes, there's room to define and improve and be working iteratively together around this particular topic, but this is what it says. This is number 4 on your handout, that we have to, through this process, establish the content of the community benefit agreement and procedures for entering into the benefit agreement, which must include outreach to the affected environmental justice area to achieve significant, there's all sorts of significant community. These are all words that need to be defined. And then consideration other than or in addition to economic considerations, but with priority given to considerations that directly impact the residents of the EJ area. So I recognize that this is not where everyone wanted to end up, and we are not always happy with legislation that ends up in our lap either, but this is where we have to start. This is what the law says we have to work from. So just wanted to point out that those are the boundaries that we were given.
And what makes this even more egregious is the fact that this is all under the guise of environmental justice, right? We're doing all this because we recognize that institutional racism has been declared a public health hazard. And so what they've done once again is made you guys the overseer. You know, we the community aren't competent enough. We're not knowledgeable enough to be able to decide our own destinies. We've got to have a white overseer organization that's between us and the future, because we'll squander the riches. And so you guys should be pushing back at that. If you are honestly intent on addressing environmental justice, you guys know every bit as well as any of us in this room what that means. Because you've been on the side of it that's been part of the designers and the perpetuation of environmental injustice. And so I would have you guys go back to the legislators and make sure that there's some community body that you guys aren't making the sole decision, but there's a appointed group of individuals from the bedrock of the community, and that they are indeed the watchdogs of this process. Otherwise, you guys, as usually is the case, Not only will you be complicit in this farce, but you guys will be the fall guys, and you will be the ones that the community will rile up against, because once again, we've been duped.
Quick question. Are there actually members or that's on staff that's actually a part of the community, or not just people there that hear say about the community that really can advocate for the community?
You're talking about MPCA staff?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we come from all over. You know, we have 1,900 people in our agency, and we come from all over. And so I'm not sure how to answer your question specifically, but you know, what we have to do, and Anna will talk about this, is what the rulemaking process does is it requires community engagement, and we have a plan for that, and we're sensitive to the comments. I'm glad to know that there was somebody here in the trenches working at the legislature on this law, and it didn't make everyone happy. We know that. All the parties involved in that were, passionate about it, and what came out of that was not satisfying to folks that are here. We have what we have, and the comment about, thinking about how the law can be better is a good comment. And it's something that we can take back. Question, and then we're going to wrap this and we're going to go to rulemaking, but yeah, let's have a couple more questions.
My thing is, I believe everything that everybody is talking about is very correct, is very accurate to today and how things has been going on. But I will say that being a part of EJCC, the organization that we're part of, is Black-led, and we have been meeting with Commissioner Kessler and the MPCA, and we've been going to different, as Black community that live in this community, has been going to different meetings in different places, going to do different conventions to learn more about how to talk to you all that have these questions. Sometimes it's difficult because y'all don't want to hear it when we're talking about it. You think it's, that's geeky, that's nerdy. A lot of people are not into what we're into. So it's kind of hard to get that information out, to get them even interested in it. We've created flyers, we posted them out everywhere. All of this has been on the backs of us meeting with these people to start something. We've gotten on them about only having 7 hours a year dedicated to this work. We've gotten on them about seeing their staff of color and where are they. Every meeting we start seeing them meeting more. We just met her on some of the Zoom meetings. So for me, I just want to say that I do understand the passion behind everybody within this, because this is a difficult thing to kind of deal with just every day, air pollution. What do? It's alarming so much. With that feeling, you need to hold on to that feeling. Because it's important, holding on to that feeling of this is not right and we need I'm explaining that right now.
You don't have my phone.
I'm not telling you what your feelings are, man. What I'm saying is understand that the feelings are tough. It's a lot of stuff going on. There's people out here really working on it look just like me and you. So let's not take it that way. Let's live, let's build together, because that's all we have at this point. We have each other. So this format that's building right now, we are trying to get in those doors and knock down those things, get us in there to help figure these things out, or be able to find out the information to start our own things. Okay? So that's what this is about. We're just here to learn about what they saying that the laws are. In a minute, they're going to offer us a moment to ask questions, the questions that we all have and the things that we're saying. They can even get through the presentation so that they can get to the point for us to do what we're doing right now before they even finish. And it's being recorded.
That's the way it goes,
So I thank you for allowing me to say that, because I feel the energy. I'm a smart man. So this is that's my take on this.
Thank you.
Would you mind going to the previous slide?
Sure.
Well, what's your question?
Oh, I was just curious about the public meeting.
The requirement for 2 public
Yeah,
meetings?
well, it said 2 public meetings, but then on here it says 1 public meeting.
It depends on which part of the process.
Okay,
And we will share these slides too, so you'll all get the slides too, so that may be helpful.
Yeah.
You can't see it.
Sorry.
Hi, so I just wanted to know who is making the rule then? So is it you collaborating with the legislators? And how can we get people from the impacted communities to be working with you on making that rule? And how can we leave here today saying that that's going to happen?
That's a great
That's
question.
the point of this.
Yeah, that's a great
We're getting
question.
there.
And that's what is going to be the next part. We're going to talk about the rulemaking process
So maybe just.
and how that looks, how people engage with that. Last slide that I have is that these are the parameters around the rulemaking and around our work on cumulative impact. The law says we have 3 years to draft these rules and get to the point where they're being proposed as final, and being, the language that he's used, the legalese is publish the notice of intent to adopt the rules in by April 2026. So we have that amount of time to do this work. Anna's going to talk about that. And we also have money that was appropriated to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to hire some people to do this work, but also to implement it. When the permits start to get written, the people that will do those permits to engage with communities, to do all of the work, it's over about a 5-year period, that money. It sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. $4.9 million over 5 years for people, for projects, and for data analysis, and some of those things that we do. So with that, question?
Does that include compensating?
Pardon me?
Does that include compensating attendees, or like community members for like public comments or public meetings?
So that's something we're looking into. That wasn't explicitly called out, but it's something that we have heard, and we're wondering how we can creatively get to yes there. So, and I'll also say, Todd said this, we're hiring people. So somebody said, who's doing this work? We'd love it if you or your smart friends, no matter what they look like, want to come and work at the MPCA.
Is there any sort of job description here available?
Well, I don't have any job descriptions with me,
There's
but
a
I
role
can
coordinator
point you.
open.
I can point you to the website where it is. I'm happy to do that at the end of this today. So
How many job positions? And what is the price range?
I don't know that off the top of my head, but can I follow up?
Everybody would like to know.
Yes, we can follow up. Okay.
All right, thank you. Again, my name is Anna. Any other comments before I get into this discussion about what the actual rulemaking process looks like?
Real quick, have you guys already hired an EJ group to work with? Is that what I'm hearing that's been happening? Is there already an EJ group that's in your ear?
So we have an environmental justice advisory group that was formed through a application process over the last year and a half.
Okay.
They are not paid. I think they get per diem.
I don't care, they should be paid, but.
We didn't hire anyone, if I think that's what you
I
asked.
think you guys should be very careful on who you hire in our communities to do this work. We got a lot of politics out here who jump right in line when money comes down the pipe.
Got a lot of what, did you say?
Poverty tax, people who make so much money off of the pain and the struggle and the work of people who are on the front lines.
That's a 60s term.
Hey, I'm on front page, I got it in me.
Just wondering, the EJ group that you have, would they be making decisions on this?
So we have started to talk to them about the same things that we're sharing with you here. This is of great interest to that group as well. So I think when you get to the point of who wants to be involved in defining the criteria and more conversations, they have raised their hand and said they want to do that work with us, but that is not the end of that. So this is a solicitation of how can we get more people and more voices in.
Is that public information that you can share with all those who might be interested?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm curious about this map. It looks like almost the entire metro area is environmental justice. So was the law written so that was the case? Because we all know Linden Hills is not the same as North Minneapolis. So I'm just really concerned about this.
This is,
How-
this is the
how did it
definition
turn
that's
out?
in the law.
How did it turn out this way?
Well, I think Todd went through the demographic criteria.
We can follow up with you.
Well, Linden Hills, how did you get that demographic in Linden Hills?
Well, we can also
That's
zoom in on that map a little bit more. I mean, it all looks blue when you look at it at this scale. We can certainly provide a more zoomed in if there are particular areas that you would like additional information on, but that was drawn off of the definition that the legislature adopted, which I think it's huge that we have a definition of environmental justice in law. Like that alone is a big step in the right direction. But yeah, we can get more detail if you'd like.
But not if everybody is in it. And
Fair.
that's my concern. Like, how did everybody become environmental justice areas? That's what I want to know.
Like, how did they get?
Yeah, I mean, we can look at which of the criteria triggered that in Linden Hills. If Linden Hills is truly in there, we can look at which criteria.
At that scale, it looks that way.
So it's not necessarily this way.
I don't know if each pixel is.
Yeah, it's the maps because it's not zoomed in specifically on that individual map. There will be areas that are not solid blue, and so not every single area within the Twin Cities metropolitan area is going to fall into that area. And so that's what we're saying. We can get a map that zooms in on a zip code, on a neighborhood, on something like that if people are interested. The law, you know, it was a big deal for us to try to get the maps created to be able to share them with you on this scale, but certainly we can provide a more detailed, a closer look. And these maps will be available on our website to zoom in on and things like that too.
And we've also heard, can we get an interactive map?
Yeah.
And that's something that we're working on too. So,
I just want to add these comments. Like, if all of these people are working on it, it's like we have to meet them where they are instead of them meeting us where the community's at. A lot of people do this stuff for free on their free time because they're involved, and yes, they should be compensated because your voice, everyone's voice in here is worth a lot. Don't give me a penny for my thoughts. My thoughts are worth a lot, and that's how people are feeling. And also, there was a petition, a petition of 100 people or something for evidence. If the commissioner and the governor are for this, why do people send it to petition?
It's not a petition for the rule or the law as a whole. That petition process, and we'll get into a little bit more of that detail as we talk about what the rule will include. That petition process is in case we get to a point where there is a law in place and it has been implemented and there's a facility being proposed and the community says, hang on, this should have to go through a cumulative impacts analysis, and it didn't get triggered for whatever reason. That's where the community can then petition and say, PCA, wake up, take a look at this. So that's what that petition process is. I don't know if that was clear.
It's like a whole lot of trickle-down economics, and that's a scam. We know that's a scam. And also the permits that get people approved or businesses approved, how many people of color actually have those type of businesses? It's still not benefiting anyone in the community.
I hear what you're saying. Yes, I hear what you're saying, and I know that some of the answers that we have are not going to be the answers that you want to hear. Some of the things we're not going to have answers for, certainly. But I do think that, you know, let's talk about a little bit about what we can do. And I really do want to hear from you all. So my role here is to talk about what the formal rulemaking process is. So we've got this law in the books, and the PCA is the regulatory agency that has to do this rulemaking. There are 2 dates that are really important. One of them is Monday, July 24th. And that is when this really, really dense bunch of words that we gave you as a handout goes on public notice in the state register. This does not mean that we have started the rulemaking process. This public notice on Monday is what actually will start the rulemaking process. And all that means is we're announcing that we're going to do this. We heard that the legislature told us that we have to do it, and we in fact have to do it by Monday, because there is also a law, as Commissioner Kessler mentioned, there are a lot of details to the rulemaking process. And one thing states that one of those, in Chapter 14, if you care where it's located, tells the agency that within 60 days of the law passing, we have to initiate rulemaking. And so that is the reason that we are starting the process on Monday. And all it does, it opens it's called the formal rulemaking docket. And what this is doing is this is saying to everybody, we are starting the rulemaking process. We have 36 months to do that, right? So I think the last slide actually said April. Technically, we have to have our rule that we're ready to move forward to bring to the final process by May 26th of 2026. It sounds like a really long time away, but it's not. And so we got to get to work, and that's what we're here to do right now, tonight. And so we'll talk through these 4 phases of the rulemaking, and then this scope and this focus, that's the idea behind this, what's called a request for comments, if you want to go ahead and move it forward. So the request for comments, that is the term that is given to this process. Again, it is what says, hey, public, we are going to initiate rulemaking, and this is a topic. And it will be posted in the state register, which is where we have to post this, and there will be a comment portal online so you can submit comments. We'll get you all the details on how to do that if you're interested, but that is certainly not the only way to be involved or the only way to submit comments. But that is part of the process that we do not have an option to do that piece differently. The other thing that we have said we are certainly going to do is we're going to hold additional meetings throughout this request for comments phase. And so we're going to do 4 meetings in person, open house style. We're going to have a virtual meeting. And that is all we have decided so far, because we need input from those who want to be at the table, how they want to come to the table, how they want to be involved. And that, in fact, is one of the biggest questions that we're asking in this public notice is for those of you who wish to be involved in this process, who want to have a say in those details about what does a community benefit look like, what should be included, what should be the considerations. All of those things are still on the table. So the only things that are really set in stone is that this is starting officially on Monday, and that we need to have that final rule ready to go by the 26th. So the next slide just shows a little bit of kind of what is it that we're looking for when we say we want to hear about how do we shape the rule. So it is these things like what triggers should be considered when we're determining whether or not a facility needs to do a cumulative impacts analysis. How should the agency engage with stakeholders along the way? What are the methods that you want to see us out in the community talking to folks? Who should we hear from? What are the voices that maybe we don't know are out there that should be considered? So those are all the types of things that we really want to hear about in this process. And then once we get through that, and I'll also note that technically the public notice for this request for comments will close on October 6th. That's not really a big deal, because from now all the way until 2026, when we get this rule ready to go on notice, we will be having meetings, we will be having work groups, we will be having conversations with people. We can get information from anywhere, from anyone, in any form, and use that information to help develop what the rule is ultimately going to look like. So some of our thoughts were just having some work groups that are maybe dedicated to those specific elements. We're going to have some people who are really interested in what are the numeric thresholds that are going to be necessary for a facility. We have some people who are going to be way more interested in what the heck does the community benefit look like, those types of things. So we want to hear from you about what types of engagement is the most useful, is the most meaningful. So that will happen throughout. And then ultimately, we do have to create a rule. We have to write this rule language, and that will go on public notice. Part of that is the actual rule language itself, and then we have to create technical support documents, and we have to create what's called a statement of need and reasonableness, all just supporting documents that justify why what we're doing is the appropriate way to implement the law that the legislature has approved. That being said, there was a comment about, maybe the law isn't perfect right now. Laws can be changed, right? And so there is a chance that the law will be tweaked at some point in subsequent sessions, and we'll roll with it. We'll adapt to that. And then the next thing I want to make sure is very clear is there are multiple times to participate, to provide input throughout the process. But then there is a formal public notice of the actual rule language. That has to happen by May of 2026. And we already know that we're going to publish what is called the Notice of Intent to Adopt the Rule with a hearing. So that means that there will be a public hearing in front of an administrative law judge where anybody is welcome to come and testify about the rule, about whether or not it looks good, whether it looks bad, what's missing, anything that anyone wants to say on the public record in front of an administrative law judge. And then that judge, not the MPCA, is who decides, did we do our jobs? Did we actually write a rule that implements the law and does what the legislature directed us to do? So I really encourage you to, I know it's a long ways up, it's 3 years down the road, but there will be that public hearing, and that is an opportunity to solidify this.
But Anna, just to reemphasize, we have 3 years to
Oh,
work
yes.
together to get to this point. So I think people are saying, we need to be in on the ground floor, we need to be in at square one. This is that moment.
Right, and this is what is, so again, the formal process that's kicking off on Monday that's going on public notice, that is, we're asking for feedback on how people want to come to the table, how they want to be involved, those types of things. And that's really what we need to know, because as we've heard many, many, many times, it is not helpful if we try to decide what the best way to do outreach is. We need to outreach to community the way community wants to be involved. And so that's really what we're looking for here. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to get clarification on the dates. So you've got October 2023 to April 2026 of development. And then the public notice and hearing is just May to July 2026. What's the rationale behind such a short timeline for people to read the rules?
So and that is not set in stone, certainly. I mean, but the idea is that we were thinking we would probably do a 60-day public notice, and there would be the hearing as well. That certainly, I mean, there is not a rule that tells us we must do X number of days of public notice. But ultimately, we do want to get toward adoption of the rules so that it does become enforceable and we can actually then implement it. So, that's the idea there. And then the other piece is, there's the public notice and the hearing. But from the October over the next couple of years, that is when we will be having multiple conversations, seeking input on actual content to put in that rule. Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering if there was an amendment to the statute next session, how would that affect the rulemaking?
So that question is, if the statute were amended next session, how would that impact the rulemaking? Some of the answer to that is it depends, because it would depend on how, if it were amended in some fashion that we wouldn't need to restart the rulemaking, then we would keep going along. We can also publish additional RFCs, or this request for comments. So perhaps in a situation like that, if the legislature made a change around perhaps how the community benefit agreements were drafted and the approval process for those, if that change were made, we could issue an RFC and we could say, we need additional feedback on this change that was made to the law at the legislature. We're going to keep the rulemaking process going along, but we need additional input on that. And then ultimately, our final rule would need to address whatever the law is, is on the books with the legislature. So yeah, if tweaks happen along the way to the language, we'll work with it. Other questions? Yeah.
Thank you, Anna. A lot of good information to process, and I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about the goal of the request for comment process and the scoping part of the process. Is the intent to kind of gather input from community about how they want to participate in this rulemaking process overall? I guess is one of my questions. And has the MPCA already identified all the questions that will be part of this request for comment, or is there still an opportunity, for example, if community members have input on questions that they think would be valuable to include as part of this request for comment? Will the MPCAs, would they update the questions they have, or would they receive that input from community? Because community members may have ideas about what questions they think would be valuable to include in this request for comment in order to kind of bring out information.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll start with the first one, kind of what is the purpose of the request for comments, and is part of the request for comments to ask community how they want to be involved? The answer to that is absolutely yes. So we are certainly seeking that. And the request for comments, we posed some questions that come out of the law to give people an idea on the types of things we want to hear.
You can comment on absolutely anything you think MPCA should consider as part of this rulemaking throughout the request for comments. So if there's a question that perhaps, should have been included so that, to provide people some ideas on what types of comments, as I mentioned, we certainly can do subsequent requests for comments, we can do formal publications, but we also can collect information at any time in any fashion we want. And we do intend to have many listening sessions, many work sessions, hear ideas about what the actual law should look like. There are some examples of other states, but there's not a lot, right? There's not a lot for us to build from. And so we need to hear about what is meaningful in terms of getting this law that the legislature passed into rule so that now we can enforce it. So absolutely, we can always add on questions. Yeah.
So can I just say specifically to Cecilia, if you have questions that you think we should ask and you have them ready this evening, we will receive those.
Yes.
Otherwise, you can follow up with us.
But this request for comments that is going on public notice on Monday, this one cannot change because it's already at the state register because we have to submit it to them so that it can get published. But it doesn't. Yeah. It really is just, hey, tell us anything you want about what should be considered for this rulemaking. So sometimes requests for comments, all they say is, this agency is going to do rulemaking as related to this chapter. Give us your thoughts. So we try to give a little bit more context here.
Is there a way that you could have an option where it says, if you want a copy of your comments for paper trail so that people, can also keep their records of what they sent in? Can you guys add that option so that people get copies?
So all of the comments that are submitted online through the Office of Administrative Hearings portal, so they're all available there. And all of the comments that we get will be part of the formal rulemaking record. So certainly we can provide you with a copy of them if you're interested, but all of those will also be part of the entire rulemaking record that at the end of this process, the administrative law judge will be looking at. So everybody has access to every comment that was made.
What time is that, or when does that go on? What time does that, close, and then you guys update that so people can see it?
So while the comment period is open, so which will go live on Monday the 24th, any comment that is made on that website, anybody can view. So you can go into the website and it says something like, I'm sorry, I'm not going to know the exact term, but it says something like view conversation or something like that. And then you can see every commenter who has provided a comment and what that comment was right there on the website. And then once the comment period closes, which is that October 6th, then that is the point where the Office of Administrative Hearings will send us a copy of everything that was submitted as well so that we have it for the rule record. But yeah, it's all out there so anybody can view it at any time.
That was actually part of my question. But my second part to the question is, during these meetings, will y'all, seeing that you said you're planning to have a lot more different community conversations, I'm curious if there's a way for the notes from those conversations to be shared out afterwards.
Yeah, there are lots of options. So whether it is a transcript, whether it is a recording, there are lots of options. But that would be a wonderful thing for you to provide as a comment, and what would be the best way to provide that. So if it's having, a written transcript of a meeting, if it's having a recording, if it's both, if it's something else, if it's notes, all of those things are on the table. There's nothing that's off the table at this point in terms of what we could do for those meetings. Yeah.
Do you have any, well, I'll preface this by saying I'm sure many people in this room have been on commissions, been, at the table, some of us in the room are on the city's and Community Environmental Advisory Commission, and nothing we recommended was put into actual statute, practice, law. What are your metrics for taking all these comments, input, conversations? What is the metric for inclusion, ultimately, of those comments in the changes? It's not like we get to decide, just because we comment.
Sure. Well, some of it will be bringing the concepts. So these are the things we heard during the request for comments. We want to bring those back to community, and we want to say, what are your thoughts on these? Do these make sense? We want to look at, is there some consensus, some agreement? But I mean, ultimately, there is responsibility on us to meaningfully take a look at the comments that are received and to consider them fully. I mean, that is our charge, and you should hold us accountable to that.
Hey, I don't know if you can see this person behind the pillar.
Yeah.
Just to uplift what she was saying about the access, how it's going to be made available. I think all the above should be made available to meet different people where they're at, because some individuals may, from literacy levels, and may respond to or take in and absorb differently. So I think that you should actually consider all of those elements of mediums of recording, transcription, etc., in order to make sure that it's truly accessible. And then that's a definite must when we're looking at equity and inclusion.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Accessibility is an important component of this. And so, not just having written and recorded, but also what languages do we need, what materials, and things like that. So that is something where we're hoping that you all can help us come up with strategies for that. But I agree with you. I think the more we can do to ensure that we are being as inclusive as possible and making sure that people are able to receive the information. So thank you for that. Yeah.
Hi, so you're asking for those kind of comments on process, but for this comment period, they have to be submitted, to put those comments in, they have to be in written form to get those comments to you, or is just a verbal conversation let you know that, because if this first initial, am I understanding that right, this first initial comment period is just written to let you know to expand the comment period to other forms of comments?
So, sorry, yeah, let me clear that up. So the request for comments is seeking written comments, but we can accept comments any way we want, and we don't have to only accept them during the comment period. So we are going to be taking notes from this evening's meeting, and we're going to say, okay, we need to provide those comments. So everything we're hearing tonight are valid comments that we will be considering, that we will be including in the process as we develop it. So while the Office of Administrative Hearings does say you have to give us written comments, we can take verbal comments, we can take comments in lots of different forms.
Just two quick questions. First, the environmental justice advisory thing that you had, those individuals, is public who's in that group currently?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And then second is, when it comes to the definitions in the statute we're looking to give life to flesh out, to give spirit to, do you have current as an agency, do you have current working definitions of those terms that you are kind of using as a starting point right now that you're beginning work from?
As it relates to cumulative impacts, we don't. We have not started writing this rule at all, so we don't have those. I mean, are there other instances in rule where similar words might be used that we could perhaps use as reference? Sure, there are, I bet. But no, to answer your question, we have not started to define the terms that are new and out of the law.
So talking about languages, also thinking about what languages we can be having meetings in and providing those resources, because I think we're having a real missed opportunity here only speaking in English.
Absolutely.
So maybe the next meeting we can be, including more people in that. And I want to make sure that you've had your hand raised for a while to get to your question.
Go ahead. Oh, hi everyone. Well, where to begin? This is a great effort, and I have several questions. One of them is actually a follow-up to what she mentioned about getting a paper trail for answers. I know MnDOT, when you enter a public comment, it goes into something called form stack, and then if you provided your email, you'll get an email back almost instantaneously with a record of what you submitted.
And I believe the OH does the same. Yeah, the OH, is Office of Administrative Hearings. So
But my actual question was about implementation. I mean, you have this 3-year timeline, but there are several major projects in the pipeline that will have issues with cumulative impacts of different types of pollution. And one of them being the one that I'm involved with as a community member, which is the Highway 252 and I-94 project through North Minneapolis, Brooklyn Center, and Brooklyn Park. And then the corollary of that, of course, is the so-called rethinking I-94 project, which was in the news recently, as most of you probably know. So these are already in the pipeline.
Right.
What scope is there to, by the time you're done in 3 years, a lot of work will have been done, especially with any environmental impact statement, which is a federal process. So is there going to be like opportunity to, I don't know, start implementing even before you're completed with this development process on, demanding strict study of cumulative environmental impacts or health impacts? I guess they're kind of the same.
Sure.
Or, retroactively, depending on the schedule. I'm not being a layperson, I'm not sure exactly how these things are applied. But at what point do existing projects get the full treatment? Or are they, just moving ahead according to old rules and not going to be subjected to new rules, which are going to be much stricter? This applies to things like the Climate Action Framework and the Transportation Bill. So those, that come into effect after the project's already started and is well underway. And how do things, how does implementation occur, or are we too late? Are those projects just going to go ahead and have, old, not very strict rules applied and a low level of analysis done, and they just get passed and done, and then much later on in the timeline, these stricter, I presume, rules are going to be developed and passed, I hope. And
This is unprecedented.
and then we don't get the benefit of this work, because the results occur much later. So
can I speak to
yeah,
that?
so I'm not sure,
Yeah.
where I'm going with the question,
So,
but this is, you understand what I'm asking, right?
I understand. So, I will say that we have some experience in Minnesota with cumulative impacts. There is a law that applies only to the Cedar Riverside, Phillips neighborhood in Minneapolis currently, and this grows out of that. So there's experience with facilities, and we talked just briefly at the beginning about Smith Foundry, and that is subject to a cumulative impacts process. We have had interest in the agency for 10 plus years in doing more of this, and that is part of the reason we also were proposing this type of legislation this year. So certainly there are people at the agency who are eager to do this type of work. Whether or not we have the legal standing to do it beyond where the legislature has said we must, which currently right now is in the Phillips neighborhood, and when this process is done, will be in the areas that are subject to environmental justice definitions, is questionable. So if we were to do that, and part of the way we might do that is to work with the proposer and say, there's a lot of interest in your project. We think it might be in the best interest of you to sit down with community and the agency to listen and see if there are ways that you could change your proposal, change your project to be less impactful or to be a better neighbor. And we do have examples of doing that, but it has to be voluntary with the proposer at this point. Another way to get at that, which is kind of around the end, is to complain after the fact, after permits are issued, and challenge them and say that they don't meet Title VI of the Civil Rights Act because you aren't actually looking at where impacts are occurring. And that has happened in other states. It hasn't yet happened in Minnesota.
I can maybe add a little to this too. So specifically the rule that we're talking about is about
air permitted facilities. And so the projects that you referenced, I believe, were mostly transportation projects. And so those are Minnesota Department of Transportation. But you mentioned an environmental impact statement. And an environmental impact statement is a robust environmental review that is required. And one of the components of that is, sounds very similar, but it's not exactly what we're talking about here, but is, does the project have the potential to pose significant environmental effects? And that process, so the highway project, MnDOT is the regulated government unit. They're responsible for the environmental review for that project, and they are just starting to scope that out right now. And so that environmental impact statement is going to be a very long process. So we can, offline, maybe I can give you a little bit more information specifically about how to engage in that process if you're interested, because I know that that came up also at the June 1 meeting that you all had that I wasn't there, but we can follow up a little bit and I can share with you the letter that MPCA submitted on that. Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in trusting the process, and I also have experienced like a lot of community people will have concerns but don't want to be a part of the solution. Yeah. We have problems, but you're not doing the legwork and then put it all on you guys, staff and agencies to just have a magical fix. And I just believe, though, this is a start. This is a start, and you know, you have an area where, just to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, you have an area where you can put your comments and your concerns. So that's letting us know we hear you, but we want to know where is the area that you say we hear you, and this is how we listen. This is what we took in accountability in what you're saying, and this is the solution. We can have all these problems, but what is the solution? And as a community, I believe, stop with all the concerns, stop with all that, and collectively come together with solutions opposed to create more problems.
Thanks, I appreciate that. And I did fail to mention that when we have the big public notice, again, way down the line, we are responsible for responding to comments that come in. And so the agency does have to respond to those comments. And if they recommend a change to the rule, why we did or did not, you know, make that change, things like that. And then the judge will evaluate us and call us on it if we didn't do it correctly. So thank you for that. I should have mentioned that.
Hey,
Yeah.
So I'm asking now, can we see the draft that you all come up with after you look at everyone's comments? Community would like to see your draft first to approve it before you turn it in. So your draft of the rulemaking. So after you read all of our comments and you guys come together and you talk about, you know, what you guys like took in from all those comments, right? And then you write whatever draft paper rulemaking you do, and then you should come back to the table, to the community and say, this is what we came up with after all those comments. Would you guys please look over this and let us know your thoughts now before we turn it in? And we would probably need about 3 months before you turn that in. At least, because 90 days is really not that long.
Sure, yes. And so to that point, I mean, we're not going to just look at all the comments and then go and close the door and write this rule and in 3 years bring it out and say, hey, this is what we came up with, right? We want to have the back and forth throughout the entire process. And so we will likely this rule has a lot of components. So we will likely break it down into smaller pieces and have, you know, stakeholder meetings, have engagement surrounding very specific elements. And so we want to know, you know, who wants to be at the table for those, but then also, as was mentioned, somebody asked about, would you share notes, share follow-up, things like that. There will be a lot of back and forth and a lot of opportunity for conversation.
Are we stakeholders?
Everybody who wants to be a stakeholder is a stakeholder.
So I stood in here, I heard the breaking it up in chunks, and I don't understand that quite well. But will we get a chance to, you know, as a community, like how we're invited today, will we get a chance to look at the draft before you guys turn that in as a rulemaking?
So the draft rule prior to the public notice of it?
Prior to when you turn it in to the authority.
Yeah, so it has to go, it will go on a public notice and there will be a public hearing before it ever gets adopted or anything like that. So that is built into the process, but we also...
No, I mean, come back to us. So like there's a public process and then there's a community process that we demanded today, right? So this is a community process because we demanded y'all be here. Now whether or not we guys don't need to be leading these. But I'm saying, we should be able to see it before you turn it in, you know what I mean? Before you turn it in for public review as well. Because a lot of us in the room are part of the making of the bill, right?
Absolutely.
So we need to see it first before you release it out. So before it goes to our people, and then our people get upset over what they're looking at, we want to see it first so that we don't hold out to our people. You know what I mean? And everybody's like, what's going on? We need to help you all because you're not the experts, remember?
So I think one of the things that I'm hearing is how can we design a process together that iteratively reflects input from people who are really, experts and have been involved along the way. And so I think we're going to commit to developing that process with you. I also am wary of saying things that get us crosswise with the administrative law judge process. So we have to just make sure we're working well in advance of that, so that when we get to that point, we're like, yes, we did everything the law requires us to do, but I still think there's room to do what you're asking. So we should talk more about what it looks like to iteratively come back to community and say, here's what we've heard, here's what we've done, here's who has helped us get to this point, and here's what we think is next. So I think it's
I'll say, well, I want to piggyback on the question of sharing information and tracking it. I want to ask is how is the MPCA going to be collaborating with the MDH on tracking and sharing information, the health aspects of the law? So how is that you guys communicate with the MDH? I'm sorry.
We regularly do coordinate with other agencies when we do rulemaking. And again, these are like the type of data that should be tracked and should be considered for this rulemaking. We want to hear from you what that data is. And if you have ideas on how you think that could be facilitated effectively, we certainly would love to hear that. But in terms of our coordination with other state agencies, that does happen often. But if you have specific thoughts on particular items, those are the types of things that it's really useful for us to hear about.
Right, I want to go back to Roxanne's statement, because we can do better than just coming back to you before we submit it. The beauty of the legislature, for better or for worse, they didn't define any of this. They threw this back to the agency and to the community and stakeholders to work together to define and develop it over the next almost 36 months. So there's a great opportunity here to collaboratively work together. Part of our process is when we go in front of a law judge, we need to show that we've heard voices together. We've heard all the voices together. And so that's part of this process over the next 36 months. How do we want to build and define a community benefit agreement together? How do we pull folks across, because this is both not just the north side, the east side, Phillips, Frogtown. The legislature's now defined what an environmental justice area is, and it's a big map, as you can see in the back, including Rochester and Duluth. Those voices need to be brought into the process too, to help build this together. And so we have 36 months to think about how we want to do a petition process, about how we want to require a facility to do a cumulative impact analysis. We have time together to figure out what is the process for going through a community benefit agreement, what should be included in there. Like, again, the legislature left this wide open for all of us together to work on this.
So there's no law right now saying that we can't have community judges look at it before an administrative law judge. There's no law against that right now. Is that right? So you could do it if you...
Yeah, they make it sound complicated, huh? Like I'm not exiting the judge, so we can still keep the judge. But before the judge sees it, community should see it first. Because the judge probably didn't have much to do with the process.
I'm sorry, can I get her question again? She was interrupted. Can I hear your question? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's really like there is no current law saying that you can't show it to a community group before you show it to even before you show it to the public and then the administrative law judge. There's no law about that right now.
There's no prohibition.
Okay, so you totally doable.
Yes, and
what
again,
Roxanne
that
recommended.
is, part of what.
Just confirming. Just wanted to confirm.
Thanks.
So
But
people are
but
being very
remember-
patient with their hands up.
Yes, and let me just say this. So we're saying what you
what you hear, they're taking what you hear, but this is why this is gonna be this iterative process, so that what you say can, where it makes sense, be reflected, and this is a community agreement, right? And so the goal is to have the input that at some point you can see some of that collaboration happening in that final product. So remember, your physical space is important to be here and to talk, but this is not the only chance to do it, right? So there's gonna be more chances. Thank you. Yeah, let's go here.
No, I think it's yeah. Oh, I was just going to comment that, you know, we're all talking from some kind of theoretical frameworks that probably need to be more clearly expressed and understood, so that we're really clear on the, I don't know, common vocabulary and common kinds of concepts that we're trying to use. And you know, I heard a couple of people talking about process of co-creating, and that's related to a fairly new a way of understanding community and citizen partnerships with government agencies and many other types of organizations and agencies in our society, coming together, who have been kind of in silos in the past and just had limited forms of public comment and ways to influence processes. So these are like new ways of theorizing and developing methodologies, and it almost seems like the community is really ahead on this type of conceptualizing, and government agencies are behind. And so there's a kind of disconnect in communicating what it is that communities are asking and wanting to do in partnership or collaboration with government agencies. And I don't know, I'm just going to throw it out here that maybe some kind of workshops or programming needs to be done to like clearly bring out what these theories and concepts and frameworks and methodologies are for co-creating, because they're kind of new for a lot of people in the community. I myself only just been exposed to them over the last 2 years. I'm sure they're much older than that, but they're kind of new-ish. And I think it would help a lot to help us communicate better about what it is we're trying to achieve.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great point.
I'm new to this space of agency and work and all that stuff. So for me, I'm just thankful and grateful. Like the young lady said, like it always seems like once stuff is done, then you come to the community. So I'm thankful and grateful to be part of this, because I always see rulemaking process and I'm wondering like, what is that? How does it work? So I hope that you guys will be intentional in educating us in the whole process and how it moves along. And then due to the fact that it's such a huge space that we're thinking about, then transparency and accountability is an important part of this process. How do you guys plan on making sure that every voices are heard? Because like we break down into counties, we break down into districts, we break down into Princetons, and a lot of the times what I see is nonprofits speaking for the community. So how do you guys plan on being accountable and transparent as far as creating different groups in different areas to make sure everybody's voices are heard?
Can I just say, one of the things that we are hoping you all will help us with is to design a process that does just that. Right. So, I mean, the usual suspects show up. I will say that happens.
The usual people who do this shit all the time. You know what I mean? Like, we're not suspects.
I'm sorry.
We gave up a lot of free time to do this.
Sorry, I used the wrong word. Usually the similar
there's the other
people.
ones, right? That are in the room solely because there's a lot of money involved.
So we want to be intentional about reaching people who have not historically been part of the discussion.
Would you consider having an advisory group?
Yeah, I think we're interested in if there are people who want to serve on groups with us. I think advisory group has a specific name in terms of rulemaking, but certainly a working group of, we're very interested if people want to be more engaged.
And I think to the point of an advisory group or work groups or things like that, we are interested in how do we reach those individuals who we have not necessarily had the reach to before. So again, we are hoping that there are community connectors who can help us achieve some of those and bring individuals to the table. So yes, absolutely, we're open. We're over here.
Can I just make one comment?
Yep.
I want to be clear though and be super transparent, right? Because this is about, we're all putting it on the table and being clear about this. The judge requires us to make sure, I said it earlier, that all voices are heard. So if we create an advisory group or a work group, it can't just be community. We have to find a way to bring in the other larger stakeholder groups, which are municipalities and the cities, and we gotta find a way to bring in the business community who's impacting this as well. So it is a collaborative.
You gotta bring the dirty dozen, you know.
We gotta make sure, because at the end of the day, this goes in front of a judge, and if the judge says, we didn't do our job, this is all for naught. Like, we've wasted 36 months of everyone's time. The goal is that we have to get this approved by an administrative law judge and have it stand on its merits so that we can implement it and do the right things for communities all across the region. Yeah.
All right, two parts is, with the data collection in the portal, is it by address, zip code, city, county, that it's collected? And the reason I'm asking that is it's such an expansive area, and one zip code or one area may see it differently or have different impacts. And so if the response in the process isn't expansive enough to include those voices and concerns, not just because, okay, this, but because it affects the different zip codes or area codes.
So when you talk about, are you talking about how the environmental justice areas are defined?
When you're collecting that data from the input through your portal, when you're getting that feedback, soliciting the comments from the community, does that portal include that information for geographic location?
No.
It needs to. Because that's going to be a very important factor in how individuals respond and how this can apply to those different areas. And then secondly is, as we continue to talk about the scope and focus and the development and co-development and whatnot, is someone had mentioned it earlier, is I think it's important when you're dealing with community members, because of many times the communities in front of the sacrifices being made, is some type of stipend.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for people just to get paid, just to be paid, but it's really saving you all a boatload of money, because if you were going out getting a consultant to do this, you're going to get it for free from the community. That's extractive. And so that's exploiting the community in order to move this forward. So I think please take that into consideration for the folks in the room that are part of the community and are willing to be at the table, to sacrifice the time from family, potentially jobs, needing to require to get sitters, the transportation required, and that's very important in this process. And I think it also may help bring other individuals to the table that may not be here tonight, and may open it up for them to be there in the future.
Yeah, thanks, I appreciate that. And as Commissioner Kessler mentioned, we are looking into what ability we have to do those. We don't know the answers right now, but we will certainly be following up on that specific topic.
Wow, and then Michael.
Okay.
What I want to say is, a question is more, we have a lot of neighborhood associations around. One that's really treacherous is Frogtown Neighborhood Association. A lot of these organizations get monies for doing things in the community, saying they're doing stuff in health, in community and doing this and wellness, Frogtown Farms, things like that, all get shut down. Money is getting sent to them and they do nothing. So how are we going to hold these organizations accountable for these type of things? And is there an audit that could be done within the state where what monies and things that are allowed to get from, that platform?
So, I think there's a couple things there. Certainly we have to show how we spend all the money that the MPCA has been appropriated to, that's part of the rule. Like, we'll have to say, this is how we spent the appropriation that the legislature gave us. And then I think.
But how do you track, they can give you receipts, say we did this work and they did nothing. They just sat down.
Oh, so I think the question.
So how do you detail, itemize the things that these organizations do?
So maybe I just clarify, is your question, if we were to contract with people to help us do engagement or to do other components of the
And you
role?
pay them thousands of dollars to do this work, but they engage no.
Well, that would be a problem, and I think, yeah, we would
So
have
I'm
to.
thinking like this, be wary of when it comes to these neighborhood associations. Some of them can be good, but some of them are just, like she said, poverty and they just trying to get some money. And they doing whatever they can to get it, and just let the people wonder. I had an organization that was called Feeding Frogtown, which this organization switched the name. Now we have to switch our name to called Feed the Dream. We did stuff within the community, but everything that they were collecting for money to help do this work, they weren't giving it out. This now has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That's just showing you an example of what I've had to physically go through with these neighborhood associations. And they have just gotta be mindful of that.
You know, I find it interesting that we frame this from an environmental justice language, right? Which of course come down from the federal level clearly to address those marginalized communities that have been historically, economically deprived. And yet, when we get to these examples of legislation, it always gets whitewashed. It always gets expanded. We can't just, the stakeholders aren't only those that have been neglected. Let's include everybody because they need a voice as well. But then it's interesting enough that then the democratic process has to be held to account. But this is clearly already whitewashed. It's already, not named properly. If it's environmental justice, and if we're talking about air permit, since this is the narrow topic that we're talking about this evening, where's the community benefit? What does that mean? What is the benefit agreement that we might propose? What does that mean? Does that mean that there's going to be some kind of resources that go to residents in our community, BIPOC organizations in businesses in the community, nonprofits in the community? Or is it simply going to be that we're going to put up air monitors? And then the question comes to me, well, are those people that are already there, that are already polluting, are they going to be grandfathered? Are they going to be held to the same account? Or because they're here and they're established, like Roxanne brought up, like GAF and those organizations, we're not getting at the root of the problem by any of this nonsense. And so money's going to be spent, people are going to pat themselves on the back, but we're not going to bring any real transformative change because clearly we start from the wrong perspective where everybody must benefit, even at the cost of those who have long been, marginalized, those who are the most impaired. But we whitewash it and scatter the money far and wide instead of narrowing at the problem, making sure that people in the community who have been most impaired, most impacted, that they are the beneficiary. And yet I haven't heard any conversation this evening about what does that mean? What is a benefit to the community? And what does that mean? That we're going to have better health? Is there money in this that's going to transform the economics of our community? And none of those questions have been prefaced in this conversation.
So none of those questions have been answered because those are the questions that we need to bring forward as we start this process. And so, yeah, there are a lot of terms that are not yet defined. There are a lot of things we don't know what that looks like because we don't have it yet. We are just now getting ready to initiate that process. And so we want to hear what would a meaningful community benefit agreement look like? What are the things that we should consider including in that, when we address them? So you're right that we haven't answered those questions because we're posing those questions at this point.
I haven't even heard them posed in this conversation this evening. All I've heard is that there is this process where there's going to be some air permits that are going to be rolling out, and there's going to be some rules on which people must engage in order to practice in those communities, some kind of standards that they must practice. And does that mean those that are already there who have not been practicing, are they grandfathered, or will all people, regardless, be held to this new standard?
Michael, can I just say, that's the first question up there, what should be in a community benefit agreement?
They'll continue to be grandfathered until we do something about that.
Well, upon permit reissuance too is another piece of that.
So I just want to be clear. We want to work with people to help us define what community benefit looks like, what should be in a community benefit agreement. It's right there in the first question. So if there's a group of you that want to actively work on that with us, that is an area that is entirely ripe for development.
Now, see, and that's what I'm saying. We can't be having the little new groups to come in. Here's my issue. How many people were part of this process before this bill passed? Hands up. How many people were a part of this process for this bill before it actually passed? Okay, I see 2 hands in a row. So before we start bringing in groups that don't know nothing about the bill, that see the dollar signs, I just want to say, do not give the power for any of this to one group. Don't do it. And I will call out any group if they try. Because you know what I don't like seeing is black women on the front lines doing a lot of work, and then everybody comes through when the money and the passes. I am so sick of seeing it. I've seen it with Northern Metals, and I'm seeing it now. And I'm telling you, we ain't doing no advisory group. The whole community is the advisory.
So I think a couple people still have their hands up. You haven't spoken.
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question. I feel like I know the answer, but I just have to ask it anyway because I got excited. It's in regards to section 6 in response to 5 on the petition process where you get tribal consultation and elect to apply this section for a permit application. Is that in federally recognized Indian country, or is it in historical ceded lands as well?
So Helen and I just got this question while we were at consultation last week with the leaders of Fond du Lac, and I believe Helen's answer was that it's the federal definition.
Yeah, it's in the cumulative impact law. There's USC code, and I forget the exact numbers behind it, but it's further defined in that code.
Okay, thank you. I decided to
I'll go back just quickly to I know we're over, right? Yep, thank you. But I'll go back to the permitting question. You know, I think Todd in his presentation, it was about 110 facilities in the metro and in Rochester and Duluth that are part of it. You take Rochester and Duluth out, we're down to about 90. We are planning here in the next several weeks to release that list of here are the net of all the facilities that are impacted by this rule so that you know which 110-ish facilities are. And that is applicable to if they do expansions, that's applicable if they have a permit renewal, or on any new facility that comes into any of these areas. That gets the 2 different types of permits, air permits that are needed.
Yeah, so that's the direct answer. Nobody's grandfathered in. If you're in the area and you're on the list, you have to be subject to the law. All right, 2 more questions and then we're going to end. All right, he's talking.
Go. I was gonna ask, those 110 companies, are you guys gonna list them? So
Yes.
And then second of all, because it seemed like a lot of people worked on this bill and they, although they didn't get everything, they're willing to keep working to make sure all the proper things are in this bill. Are you guys open to sitting with those people?
Oh, yes. We invited all of them to come tonight, but.
No, I'm not saying tonight in this, I'm saying by themselves, not in community like this, because they have more accountability because they have been a part of the process. So have you guys taken time just to sit and talk with them?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, and that's some of those, you know, the things we call work groups or small groups or all those, we don't know what to call them, but absolutely.
No, yes. I'm not talking about that.
No, you're talking about the people who worked on the bill language to draft the bill, who were at the legislature, who have been all for the last 10 years, absolutely.
Have you guys thought about having them just be a section by themselves rather than adding additional people into the conversation, so that since you all have been working on it for so long, then you guys can piece together, levels of understanding or whatnot.
We've been engaging with, I know there is a coalition that worked on this, especially this last session. And I have had numerous conversations with EJ Table, Capal, and MCEA in the last month. And we've made the commitment, we would love to meet with the coalition monthly to work through this and make sure we're all on the same page and making sure we have a good process. So we really want, again, we are committed to doing this and working with the coalition that worked to get this across the finish line at the end of the day to do this hard work.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I wanted to say, this is an incredible opportunity, and I'm really appreciative that it's this open dialogue and that folks are able to participate in this way. It's going to be 36 months. But I do see, as the agency, when it comes to setting the structure of the process, at least with the intentions of what the structure of the process, and I think down to what the expectations are and the roles are in the meeting, and the expectations are for participation in the meeting. I think it makes sense for that to be a little more defined. And it's okay if that's something that, it comes back to the people and we're like, no, we don't appreciate this, and we shape it in that way as well. But I think it makes sense just for you guys as the agency, if we have some beginning working definitions, have some beginning just defining structure of how these meetings will take place, and what the intention is this roadmap through that 36-month period of where we would like to be in 12 months, where we would like to be in 24 months. I just think kind of further defining that would be really beneficial.
Thank you, that is great, and we certainly will provide additional information on timeline. We didn't want to get bogged down in the rulemaking process and all those details. I could have talked the entire night about that, but we wanted to get here, we wanted to have this conversation as a follow-up to the other community conversations that have taken place to make sure that before this public notice goes out next week, that we have come and said, hey, we're doing this. We are not, there's a lot that's going to change as we go along. There's a lot that needs to be developed, but certainly, we are more than willing to, to do that. But we're going to come back and we're going to ask, is this what you meant? Right? We're gonna have that back and forth.
So Cecilia, since you were a part of this, do you want to have the last question or comment?
Oh, okay. Well, sure. Thanks, Commissioner. I guess just piggybacking on what you were talking about before, part of the Frontline Community Protection Coalition, and yes, we're a group that, along with others like Roxanne and Sammy David were here, and EJCC, they were active on working on the bill before it was passed, and I think, as you said, Darren, we've been in communication with you. I think it's a both and. Having those conversations, having these larger community conversations is so important, right? So we get to hear from everybody. It's important to hear from everybody. And I guess I want to thank you for having this meeting, and I want to ask can future meetings, can those be hybrid? Because I know for some people that wanted to be here today in person that weren't able to because they just were, it wasn't possible for them, either they're out of town or other commitments. So I think that would be great. And I'm glad this is being recorded. And will this be kind of posted on MPCA's website, or how?
Yeah, the intention is that this recording will go on MPCA's YouTube channel, I believe, which we'll share it to the website. We'll also email the recording to everyone who received the invitation, regardless if they were here this evening, and then anyone who came, who provided an email address. We will. So thank you again, everyone, for being here. I think we'll wrap up the conversation.
And if you have more questions,
yeah, there are additional questions. So thank you again, everyone, for your time. We really appreciate it. As we mentioned, this really is groundbreaking, and we are excited to work together to make this as effective and important and great as we can. So
take more food.
Thank you.
Look at all that food.
Have a great night.